So would the two of you please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your role and what your responsibilities are here at Gallaudet University.
Hello, I'm Tammy Weiner, and I'm the director of the Office of Distance Education. I've been at Gallaudet for about 5 years now.
Wow, Tammy. Time flies. I am Earl Parks, and I am the Executive Director of Technology Services and fulfill the role of the CIO. I am responsible for all technology services here, including e-learning and providing support to offices such as yours in distant communication.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Could you share with us a little bit about the university and why is Gallaudet University unique?
Really, it's simple. There's no place like it in the world. Gallaudet is the only university in the world that provides education specifically to the deaf and hard of hearing students and or people that are interested in working in fields related to deafness, such as psychology, social work, counseling, and various other graduate programs.
And Gallaudet is really the center of deaf culture. We receive students from all over the world.
Some call Gallaudet the deaf mecca of the world, like you mentioned, deaf culture along with education. We have a K-12 program that serves the nation through an outreach program. We provide sources and support to residential schools and mainstream programs in all 50 states and internationally.
Yes, we have visitors from other countries that come and learn about our educational programs from kindergarten through higher education.
Yeah, recently, about a month ago, we had the Prime Minister's wife of Japan visit campus in order to learn about deaf education. This all happened while her husband was at the White House. So, international visitors often make Gallaudet one of their stops when they're in town.
That's right. And we send our interns out globally and share the knowledge they received here at Gallaudet. Students intern both domestically and abroad.
Yes, we have about 2,000 students, including online and on campus students, and we offer students about 40 majors and minors.
That's right, Earl. We also offer professional development programs and certificates as well.
Excellent. And so could you share a little bit with us about how e-learning has had an impact on students that are deaf's ability to obtain an education here in the United States as well as globally?
E-learning is an exciting opportunity for students who cannot move and live here in DC. They can learn from anywhere. There's an increasing interest in e-learning. We even have students on campus taking online courses, so it's really a really exciting time.
Interestingly, when I look back to when we first implemented online courses and e-learning tools, I would say it was during the late 90s. And for us here at Gallaudet, it was no surprise. But those on the outside looking in were astonished at how we adopted e-learning and digital technology in order to implement it into classrooms so rapidly. By the early 2000s, over 90% of classroom professors used online tools, which at that time, that wasn't common. Now it is, but back then it wasn't. Often I sit back and think, why is that? Why did we adopt so quickly? Maybe it's because as deaf individuals, we have an internal need for technology to support our lives in general. Many deaf people use hearing aids, which is technology, which helps them to communicate. Or even closed caption on the TV so we know what's going on. Or even the teletypewriter machines, the old TTY machines way back when. All of those are technological devices.
People saw the value of these tools, which motivated them to explore new e-learning tools or digital modalities in order to enhance their learning experiences.
Also, the population of deaf people is heterogeneous, with varying linguistic and educational experiences. That's true all across the U.S. and maybe even more so around the world. Because of that, we have to make sure the pedagogy supports the broad learning needs of our students. E-learning is naturally adaptable and can accommodate for active learning and passive learning and students with different learning styles.
You're talking about adaptive learning or using adaptive technology?
Exactly, accommodating. It's really important. That's where technology benefits students as it accommodates for each individual's preferences and needs. And without technology, it would be more difficult and complex.
So, I'd like to talk a little bit about the research that demonstrates that there are additional factors to take into consideration that's related to how a deaf person approaches learning and how that also applies to e-learning and online courses.
We're now looking to incorporate bilingual pedagogy into our online courses. For a long time, our online courses have only been accessible in English, but now we're incorporating a visual language approach. Since shifting to this bilingual approach, we are seeing the benefits. This is especially critical for early intervention. In fact, we have an online program that teaches about early childhood intervention.
You brought up an important point about Gallaudet's role and our approach to teaching. I think it was in 2007 when we amended our university's mission statement, which placed a central emphasis on bilingualism. And since then, well, Gallaudet was always bilingual, but it never was really officially operationalized, recognized the bilingual intent that functioned. During our official annual accreditation review, we were asked to clarify, what does it mean to be bilingual? It took us a while to figure out, but that challenged us to articulate how we constructed bilingualism and how that was going to become applicable. It's really interesting. Actually, yesterday I was thrilled to see on our intranet, where we have daily announcements and updates about events, it's called the Daily Digest. And I saw these snapshots of about 7 different announcements. And 4 of those 7 announcements had videos available, parallel to the English text. That's the operationalization of the university's bilingual mission. It's really neat to see how far we've come. And I think, honestly, if it weren't for the advancement of technology, we probably wouldn't have seen that.
Oh, most definitely. I completely agree. I would also add that we have the VL2 Research Center, which has verified the benefits of bilingual education. So that, because, like you mentioned, the university's reflection on the construct of bilingualism inspired the establishment of the center, which is actually showing the benefits of bilingualism. And we need to share that with the world. And we're doing that now, so it's an exciting time.
The VL2 Center's research you mentioned is really a profound honor for the university because the National Science Foundation only awarded 6 science centers in the country. Those grants typically went to top-tier research universities. But amazingly, because of our uniqueness that focuses on visual learning and sign language, we were able to get the NSF grant. Since then, we've been involved in groundbreaking research which challenges the notion that language can only be acquired through auditory modalities. So that's our institution's moral imperative. to help the world change that thinking. Because, it's sad to say, if we as a society continue down a path that believes that language is only acquired through listening, then unfortunately most deaf children won't get what they need during the most critical time of their linguistic development. You, as a psychologist, know how critical that time of development is for a person.
Exactly. There's a very small window of time in which people can acquire language. I agree with you, Earl.
And our human brain is probably the most advanced computer as it can adapt and accommodate itself. So, the research that is happening now in VL2 is proving that the mind can acquire language equally through auditory or visual modalities. And often, it's better for children to have both rather than one or the other.
Right. I mean, talk about infants. I mean, baby signing. Come on. And everyone benefits from that, not just deaf babies.
It's unfortunate, ironic even, that hearing babies and their hearing parents are being encouraged to sign. Because the infant's vocal cords develop later on. It's hard for parents to understand what exactly their baby is trying to say. Is the baby hungry or needing a diaper change? Regardless, during that pre-vocal development period, parents and their children are able to communicate. It seems as though the world is strongly encouraging hearing parents of hearing babies to sign, yet we don't see that with...
Yet, parents with deaf babies are discouraged from signing to communicate because they feel that being able to speak is very important. But I know, Earl, and you're right, it's quite a contradiction.
But it is changing now. Again, it is due to technology. Social media, for example. Anytime I go online, I see various advocacy campaigns, lectures, or discussions on this topic, and I wonder if it's really changing people's perceptions.
Right. And talking about the VL2, the visual learning benefits, I mean, it doesn't just benefit deaf people, but also everyone. Talk about universal learning. I mean, everyone benefits from it.
That's fascinating. Well, as we're sitting here in a round table type of a setting, as opposed to sitting in a row, we're doing that because of the visual requirements and the cultural requirements. And I know here at the university, your physical classrooms are actually designed differently than what you would see at a public university because of the cultural and visual needs of the students. So if we take that analogy from the physical classroom and would apply that to an online or an e-learning environment, how would the structure of the online or e-learning environment be different than what we typically see in the normal online courses?
Most online courses that you see are traditionally text-based, even without any audio-type products included. For us, we have to change that and need to create courses that incorporate universal design. This is not just beneficial for deaf students, but for everyone. It's similar to curb cuts. We struggled with sidewalks and curbs for people who were wheelchair users trying to get around, yet curb cuts benefit everyone, like mothers with strollers to bikers and so on. The point is, everyone benefits. So, in terms of online courses and e-learning in general, it needs to be accessible to everyone so that anyone can access the platform. We'd like to see that happen more. For instance, screen readers can help illuminate things for deaf-blind students. We service a population of deaf-blind students here, and it varies to the degree of hearing loss and levels of sight. We want everyone to be able to take online courses. So our goal is that anyone, regardless of disability, could take an online course. But people without disabilities benefit from it too. So that's why universal design is very important. If we emphasize that from the very beginning, and we have a mindset of accessibility, not a mindset of accommodations. You see, accommodations mode waits to see if there's a student requiring accommodations and then attempts to adapt to fit that student's needs. However, we need to stop that approach in this day and age. We need to make everything accessible from the very beginning.
Speaking of that accommodations approach, often results in experiences that really hinder the students. The fact is, accommodations take time and could take weeks to adapt course content. Think about what's lost in between requesting accommodations to receiving them. That's what's not right, since those students are paying for the same education that other students do. We don't provide students requiring accommodations a discount because of the lag time it takes to create accommodative resources. I think you are right, Tammy. We need to do that from the very beginning. And then people will potentially benefit in ways that would never been imagined. For example, Sonic Care toothbrushes. I know it's not really related to e-learning, but I think the concept still is applicable. I don't know if you know as to why it was invented in the first place, Tammy.
Something to do with cleaning teeth?
I'm talking about the device specifically, though. You see, Tammy, it was actually created for people with paralysis and mobility impairments who couldn't actually brush their teeth themselves. So they created the Sonic Care so they could brush their teeth on their own. Now those devices are everywhere you go, and the dentists recommend it.
And that electronic toothbrush does a better job than a regular toothbrush.
Yes, definitely. Exactly. So the point is, Tammy, the device was intended to benefit a specific population's needs, yet in all actuality, everyone benefited. Again, back to your point that accessibility needs to be the intention from the beginning, and you may be surprised to see the benefits that could manifest from that. Another example related to e-learning and the benefits of e-learning is videos. If videos themselves are not captioned videos, then they are not searchable documents, and you can't search for specific parts in that video. You see, captions were intended for people who cannot hear, but now we have linguists, researchers, news reporters, and other various professions that use captioning services to find specific parts of the video clip in order to prove their points.
That's true, Earls.
Design considerations.
Speaking of video clips, I know it's best practices if the clips are kept short. We need to do more research and explore what are the best practices, though, for e-learning specifically. Longer video clips are just not conducive, and we need to find out if most people will just be drawn to the text transcripts rather than the video clips. So that would be a research opportunity for us, but we need videos in e-learning because we need to view, to visualize, to make learning visual too. However, videos need to be kept short.
I'm curious, Tammy, and I'd like to challenge that a little bit. Long videos are not ideal. But why aren't they ideal is the real question here.
Choices, you're right.
Yes, and providing access to preferences is in itself universal design.
Right, exactly.
So, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but in the past, making videos was a much more complicated process, which required expensive equipment, tools, and videographers with specialized training. It's analogous to typists back in the 50s and 60s. We used to have a group of typists whose specialized skill was typing up memos, reports, and other various documents. But now with Microsoft Word, just about everyone is expected to type. I think it's the same with video making these days. People's mobile devices have much better built-in cameras than video cameras back in the early 90s even. So it's everywhere these days, Tammy, and videography applies to fieldwork, science, research. In the river, for example, we have this faculty member who is a leader in the field of marine biology, and she's using a lot of those technologies and mobile tools in her work.
It's amazing.
Yes, it is, as this technology allows us to capture rich data, including measurements and more, and all that helps bring the world into the classroom. And you can't always take students outside the classroom.
That's correct. And e-learning involves analytics as well. And analytics help us collect necessary data so we can continue to improve e-learning as a whole. So it's really exciting.
In your field, from the moment you wake up in the morning until you go to bed at night, that you're taking into consideration a lot of the various opportunities there are to educate students that are deaf. So, in taking a look at the future, if we look at how currently online courses are structured, and they tend to be in a more linear approach, does that linear approach really provide a good visual means of comprehending what the content is really trying to convey? I know we have gamification, but what about the actual design of the course that might be different in approaching learning in order to meet the needs of a visual learner? I know that you mentioned video, and that's one component of that. But if you were just to imagine how you would like to see education online being approached differently in 5 to 10 years, what would that look like?
Today you see animated movies, and I'm just amazed at what they can do with animation to make it so realistic looking. In terms of e-learning, you can have an instructor that films themselves giving a mini lecture or whatnot. And then another instructor will come in and teach the course. It can create cognitive dissonance, but if we had avatars, that would be really nice, but those avatars would have to be like real people and capture the minute expressions because sign language requires expressive intonation, which is a critical part of the language. Naturally, the avatars would have to be able to do that. We here at the university have been thinking about issues such as this, and that is why we have established an innovative lab to encourage our students, faculty, and staff to experiment and develop things like that. That would really help with learning. So incorporating animation in a greater way is one thing that I'd like to see. Secondly, it would be really amazing to see holograms of actual live people be implemented. So those two things I'd like to see. Earl, what about you?
I think the I'd like to go back to the avatar idea you mentioned and discuss more about the linguistics of ASL expressions. For those that may not know what ASL really entails, there are several linguistic components of the language, including grammatical structure. Often such is conveyed through facial expressions, eyebrows up versus down.
Also, role shifting or use of space.
And yes, body position too. And those nuances must be captured if we...
It's possible. Maybe. It's possible.
Oh, of course, it's totally doable. And I think it's a work in progress. But back to your point, Tammy, about holograms, I think it parallels what we were talking about earlier in terms of the early video camera equipment, which was bulky and whatnot. We technically have a version of holograms currently through the use of video conferencing technology and 360-degree TV screen displays that can represent individuals in the room.
Yes, so you feel like you are actually there in the room.
Yes, but it still requires the hardware, and it is expensive infrastructure to set up. So I think it's time, it could be less than 5 years, to where we see the tables turn and it becomes a smooth process.
Right. And this wouldn't just benefit us in the educational field, but would also benefit the business industry too. Businessmen could have meetings from anywhere in the world. It would be perfect.
We're already doing that right now, Tammy. So maybe you can explain a little bit about some of our.
Video conferencing? Yeah, so we use technology such as Collaborate and GoToMeeting, really. It's amazing to be able to meet with people from different time zones,
Simultaneously.
which means you don't need to fly back and forth to get work done. Right, Earl?
And honestly, I think that's a bit of a struggle for some of our faculty. And it's a common problem for everyone today, is how to balance that real-time, face-to-face interaction between that online, virtual interaction. And depending on the situation, it's good to have both options for interaction.
Right. It's funny you mention that, Earl. You see, I remember my faculty were still using outdated overhead projectors. And that is not true for our faculty today. They have to keep up with the times and continue to adjust to the rapid changes that take place in e-learning and e-tools. Faculty do not have the luxury of becoming comfortable with one tool or approach. They have to keep up with the times. And yes, there are some faculty who are resistant to that kind of change, especially those who have been in the field for a long time. But in general, most of our faculty are motivated and eager to learn, so that is really exciting.
I think you brought up an interesting or a fascinating point, and I've honestly never thought about that before. And it seems quite obvious now. E-learning forces curriculum renewal.
Which is so valuable.
Instead of a stagnant curriculum that just reproduces outdated content, now technology, because technology is different, you have to continue to make things relevant to today's context. So it's interesting how technology is a driving force in that.
Right, and we see this in K through 12. Schools are just continuing to progress. Higher educational institutions cannot afford to not get on board with the technologically progressive status quo. Future students have to come to universities that continue on a trajectory of technological progress.
Not only that, we also need to prepare students for the real world out there, which isn't what it was 20 years ago.
Change is constant. Jobs are changing. They have to be ready for a changing world.
Earlier, we discussed how it might be different from the typical linear e-learning approach that takes place currently that reminded me of one of my favorite childhood activities, reading these books where you could choose your own adventures. You know how it was, right? You would read and then you were presented with different options. If you wanted this adventure, then you would have to go to the corresponding page. Or if you wanted a different adventure, then you would have to go to its corresponding page and so forth. So I think that is where e-learning is going. It'll be adaptive to individual learners' preferences and current status in the learning process. It will not be homogenized, but heterogeneous, which requires us to accommodate for their needs rather than the alternative.
And they, our instructors, need to become more of learning facilitators, since most of our students already have the knowledge. They just need to learn how to use that knowledge.
And connect.
And students approach gaining knowledge in different ways, like you said, Earl. So instructors are basically guiding students to where they need to be or how to differentiate content from fact and fiction. So it's quite a different world we're in today.
Our students have to learn what fake news really means.
It's really exciting to think about what the future holds. We have shared some about the Innovation Lab here at Gallaudet University. Are there other opportunities the university is exploring both domestically and globally? So, students that are deaf may obtain a degree that might otherwise not have an opportunity where they live. As Gallaudet University is often referred to as the epicenter for deaf education, are there initiatives taking place to reach deaf students throughout the United States and the world?
Like I mentioned before, we offer comprehensive online classes and online degree programs that are offered globally. We have K through 12 education that conducts research along with their outreach program that offers webinars. Also, we have received contacts from consortiums in other countries who are interested in collaborating with us related with online learning. So that is in the works right now.
I think you're right, Tammy. We sure do have a lot of different things going on. But we also have this competition. I don't know if that's the right word, but most deaf people in the world haven't met a deaf person. I mean, most deaf people in the world think they are the only deaf person in the world. So often the cultural aspect of their identity is missing. So I'm wondering how we can provide that cultural aspect through online learning, which is a challenge we are continuing to face. So at the end of the day, as they say in Rome, all roads lead to Rome. And at Gallaudet, we like to say all roads lead to Gallaudet. So we need to figure out a way to make one of those roads an internet highway so that we can make a virtual experience that stimulates being on campus, because that experience is such an important part of cultural identity.
Definitely. And creating a sense of community. The world is getting smaller. We need to make it possible for students to experience community online.
I think one way to do that, Tammy, is through virtual reality. Now, with the virtual reality goggles and mobile phones, the possibilities are endless in terms of instruction, cultural experiences, and immersion. We can now tour Mount Temple, is that the name? With virtual reality, seeing how it looked years ago with people walking around. One dream I have is the integration of virtual reality.
To create a platform that de-isolates students and helps them realize they are not alone and there are other deaf people like themselves.
And to relate that to social media platforms like Facebook, which connect people instantly, we need to leverage such platforms and merge them with other technologies such as virtual reality.
There have been so many great success stories of international students coming here to Gallaudet University and completing their degree and then returning back to their country and setting up a lot of localized type of educational opportunities for students that are deaf. And then how could those success stories in the future also lead to e-learning type opportunities among the students that are deaf in other countries?
Like Andrew, for example. Do you want to explain, Earl?
There are just so many students that fit the bill. He is definitely one of the more prominent examples. So, anyways, there was a man by the name of Andrew Foster. He was born in Africa and came to Gallaudet. I believe it was through a church where he learned about Gallaudet. He thought to himself there wasn't another place that could meet his learning needs in Africa, so his parents had the resources to send him here. studied, got his education, and then decided he had to return back home in order to make a difference. And that is exactly what he did. He returned back home, not only to his home country, but the rest of the continent. I think he established over 20 different schools for the deaf across Africa. Because of him, deaf children in Africa now have hope and a potential future. Education begins with education. Let me give you another example that is a little more connected to technology. So, I was recently mentoring one student from Fiji. He was able to come to Gallaudet through a scholarship from the Nippon Foundation. If you don't know, the Nippon Foundation is committed to international development. Anyways, he came to Gallaudet. One other point about the Nippon Scholarship. If awarded, he had to return to his home country and make a contribution. It's really outstanding. He went back to Fiji and he worked to set up a video relay services. Video relay services allow deaf people to communicate over the phone through the use of video conferencing technology with the aid of an interpreter. Lucky for us, in the U.S., we have the FCC, which is a direct result of the Deaf President Now protest that took place in 1988, which led to the installment of Gallaudet's first deaf president. Anyways, then Congress recognized the issues, and it wasn't long before they passed the Americans with Disabilities Act. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tammy, but I think it was around 89 or 88. We just celebrated the 25th anniversary of the ADA. Anyways, because of the ADA Act, it was legally mandated that relay services be installed. Prior to that, we used old, clunky teletypewriter machines to communicate. If you were using the TTY, you had to wait for the other person to slowly finish typing their message, and it went back and forth from there. Often, a lot of things were lost in translation.
And it was all text-based.
Talk about the lack of expressive intonation. But now, VRS has completely transformed the experience for deaf consumers here in America and is starting to catch on in other places around the world too. Anyways, another good example, not limited to technology, actually involves the government. We have had a few notable alumni who now serve in their parliament. For instance, we had a South African student majoring in social work. They graduated from Gallaudet and then returned home, ran for office, and are now serving in the South African Parliament.
There was a Canadian student, too. Also, we have alumni that serve in the Peace Corps in numerous countries. So, yes, it can happen, and e-learning is completely feasible.
And with mobile technological devices are making it a lot more doable now.
People around the world are using their phones more and more, so the opportunities for e-learning are there.
Way back when, deaf people knew to carry around a pen and a pad. However, nowadays, people just text their messages on the device and communicate that way.
That's right.
The heritage here at Gallaudet University is just really rich, and I just can imagine that the richness will just continue to increase as we continue to become more globalized. Well, I just want to take the opportunity to really thank both of you for sharing with us about Gallaudet University and about how the approaches of educating students that are deaf through e-learning and just being able to share your personal perspectives of how we can really enhance and broaden the opportunities to reach more deaf students through innovation that's taking place here at your campus. Again, thank you both for sharing with us today.
Oh, it was our pleasure.